Hey, so I've just been watching the Live 8 concert from 2005. Um, it was a long event, so it's divided into four DVDs. This is my DVD box. I'm on the last DVD, which is the Edinburgh stretch of the event. I was actually at the Live 8 concert. It was arguably the largest pop concert in history. Involved many, many big names. Just to read out a few people here: Coldplay, Paul McCartney, Madonna, Faithless, Stevie Wonder, Elton John, Miss Dynamite, Pink Floyd, Bryan Adams, Will Smith, UB40, The Pet Shop Boys, Pete Doherty, Mariah Carey, Snow Patrol, Fuzzy Malacella, Wet Wet Wet, Bon Jovi, George Michael, Sarah McLachlan, Katherine Jenkins, many others. Um, and it's interesting looking back on that because firstly, it was a very impressive event. I mean, it was the largest crowd I'd ever been in Hyde Park. This was July 2005. If you don't know about the event, basically, it was organised by Sir Bob Geldof, who also organised, along with Midge the 1985 Live Aid concerts in London and Philadelphia. At that time, it was about providing relief for the devastating famine in Ethiopia of 84, 85, but a million people died in that disaster. Um, on this occasion, it was coinciding with the G8 summit in Gleneagles. That was a huge week for Britain. There was a lot going on. It was the same week as the London bombings, incidentally. But very impressive. Biggest crowd I'd ever been in, and I saw some very famous faces. I don't think I'll ever be in a situation where there's so many famous people in one place at one time. Brad Pitt, Bill Gates, many others. Um, and it was a very memorable event. For me, it was somewhat soured by the fact that I was on my own, and well, frankly, I got a bit bugged by the loneliness factor. I would have preferred to share the experience with someone. Um, and I had a whole situation where I missed my train going back and so on. But anyway, that isn't the point here. I want to talk very specifically about the subject of when celebrities pontificate on political and social issues. And this is something I've given a fair bit of thought to. Now, before people assume that this is going to be very cynical and very sort of condemning of public figures who do put forward their views. That isn't what this is about. Um, I think Bob Geldof deserves a certain degree of respect for the massive energy that he put into organising these events, and it did take a hell of a lot of work. Live 8 was much bigger than Live Aid. It was coinciding with the G8. I mean, this was concerts all over the world: London, Philadelphia, Tokyo, Paris, Berlin, and I believe the other one was in Johannesburg and Rome. So it was a huge event, thousands and thousands of people involved. Um, and I do think that Bob Geldof is driven by genuine, passionate sentiments about the situation of poverty, particularly in Africa, extreme poverty. To put things in context, even today, 500,000 people every year die from malaria, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. So this is a major, major thing. You know, there's no question about it. Extreme poverty is a killer. So the issues, no doubt, were important. What one thing that unfortunately went by a lot of people at the time was, with their best efforts, Bob Geldof and the other organisers, I think in the end of the day, most people went to those concerts to see famous musicians. It's almost like there was interjections in the concerts where Geldof and others had to remind people what the event was about. And it made, looking back at this now in retrospect, and I was directly there, I remember this, I almost wonder, was it a failed effort? Or, was it something that had good intentions, but it kind of got lost in the hype of being, people were there to see musicians. I mean, the argument, of course, would be if you didn't use famous people, it wouldn't have had the same level of attention. That's a fair argument. And, there's many examples. The concert for Bangladesh, 1971, when George Harrison organised a relief concert for the situation in Bangladesh, which at that time had been through hell. It had been through a devastating cyclone and the Civil War, or actually the Bangladesh Liberation War, to give it its correct title. Um, so this isn't a very new thing. That you can find examples throughout, certainly the past 50 years. Um, but that's one thing I noticed about Live 8. A lot of people were honestly there for the musicians. Myself, in my case, what had happened was I got a text message saying that I kind of won a place, which was great. I honestly went for both reasons. If I'm hand on heart, both reasons. Of course, I was interested in seeing famous people. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. But I also spent a lot of time at that time thinking about the subject matter. Um, but I've just seen, like I say, I'm watching The Last Disc, and I've just seen a speech by Bono from U2, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said. Um, he said, in U2 we have a rule that you could do anything except play golf. Well, I've just been to the world's most famous golf course, Glen Eagles. That's where the leaders were meeting. Um, and I can tell you, I did not play golf. These powerful men can play golf, but they cannot play poker with people's lives. Imagine that in a Bono accent. So basically, it was a little bit of populism thrown in there, and it stank, to be honest, of arrogance and a little bit of hypocrisy. Now, to be clear, Bono has done a lot of benevolent work, so has a lot of the other musicians involved in this event. The late George Michael, for instance, it's well known that he was very, very charitable. So I'm not saying that they're complete fakes. They definitely, in some cases, put their actions where their mouth is. But that's a bit of a cheap shot saying, oh, they can play golf, but they can't play poker. Clearly, the leaders were not going there to play golf. So it's a populist cheap shot. And it's something that does irritate me sometimes about celebrities, singers and actors in particular, and to some extent sports people. They can bash politicians, but in the end of the day, they're not the ones who have to make the tough decisions. And this is the caveat, and this is the way I look at it. Celebrities, like the rest of us, have a right to their opinion. So I'm not saying they cannot criticize a particular leader. Of course not. But actors and singers have to remember ultimately that's what they are. They are not legislators. They don't have a mandate in the way that elected leaders do. Also, a very mixed views on multimillionaires like Bono sort of preaching about making a better world. He has an extremely comfortable life. Now, the counter argument to this would be if he didn't say anything, people would accuse him of not caring. So that's a fair argument. But surely it would be better for public figures to work with legislators rather than just bash them because it's an easy thing to do. I mean, it's total populism and it's really, I don't have much time for it. Um, and this applies across the board. I mean, take Madonna, for instance, threatening to blow up the White House. Why doesn't she reach out to President Trump and say, Mr. President, I know you have a busy schedule, but I would appreciate if you took time to meet me to discuss these concerns? That to me would be a lot more pragmatic than simply saying blow up the White House and then claiming it was taken out of context. Needless to say, had a right winger said something similar about Barack Obama, I don't know. I've mixed views on this because I certainly don't begrudge public figures from speaking out on charitable causes. And it is true that if they didn't, they would be criticised for that as well. So, it is walking a thin line. But sometimes it can come across as pompous. I definitely think Bono comes across as pompous. And this isn't the first time I've got that impression. And it's not that he doesn't do benevolent work, but the guy's a multimillionaire. Similar criticism was made 2 years later at the Live Earth concert, organised by Al Gore and others. On that occasion, it was that these people were talking about how we need to save the earth and everyone has a responsibility and so on. And yet they were using private jets to go into the concert venue. Now that is something that is just hypocritical. Um, and this crosses across all sorts of issues. Um, when I hear wealthy black or Asian or Hispanic actors whinging about, how hard things are, I really take a dim view with that. I've said on previous occasions, I don't think people should use their demographic as an excuse. Um, so summed up, I think that celebrities can certainly provide a voice to a movement, and they're entitled to their views. I would never say, oh, they should just shut up and get on with singing or get on with acting. But they should remember that they're not elected. They might have big fan base, and they might, but they have to remember that they're not living gods. They're not untouchable, and sometimes they're. I think, especially those at the very top, I get the same impression from Madonna. There's a real arrogance there, and their fans are going to hate me for that, but that's just my candid perception. It's just that they can say things that politicians could never get away with, and they know it. Um, so I don't know. I would just say about celebrities that it's okay to lend a voice to these things, but remember, ultimately, you are first and foremost a singer, or you are first and foremost an actor. Have political opinions, but don't pontificate and preach and talk down to people, because sometimes that's how it comes across. Um, so telling like the average Jill or Joe on the street to send lots of money to a particular cause when they themselves are multimillionaires, it just seems a bit. I don't know. I think it doesn't go down well. Um, this isn't, universal. There's public figures who do. They are aware of the position that they're in. I think there's people who don't take themselves too seriously, and they offer the viewpoint, but they don't pontificate in the way. And I do see differences. So I don't think every celebrity is like this. I don't even want to use that term celebrity too much because it's sort of it's not the best way to put it. Really, public figures is probably a better term. Um, so, like I say, it's not about them not having a voice. And if they didn't speak, people would probably say they're self-centered. But it's just about doing it in a certain way. Put it this way: if I'm a public figure, if I've been successful, I'm currently writing. Now, let's say for the sake of argument, I become as big as J.K. Rowling. It isn't going to happen. But let's just say I did. Would I be quiet and just get on with things? Of course not. I'd be opinionated, as you could tell from these videos. But I would also like to sort of remind myself where I came from and not kind of assume that I'm in this ivory tower where I can preach to the masses. I think that you have to be very careful with these things, not to come across as overplaying your role. So, as a writer, I would say this is my opinion. You can agree or disagree with me. That's all. Let me know your thoughts, and thanks for watching.